Welcome into a live IC Daily. I'm Tommy Ashley. That's Greg Barnes. This is Inside Carolina, of course, sponsored by Johnny T-Shirt. We're going to find out who the diehards are. We were on a live show last night talking about next steps for North Carolina football into 10:30-ish or so. I went to bed well after midnight, as I'm sure Greg Barnes did, and here we are at 8:30-ish on a Friday morning with the news that Freddie Kitchens is out, officially out, as offensive coordinator for North Carolina. Greg, certainly not a surprise.
No, and as we reported last week, this was the expectation all along. And one of the things we talked about last night on our show, Tommy, is how there's a little bit of frustration within the fan base of why is this taking so long? And I think it's just a matter of how Bill Belichick works. So we knew it was coming. It was really just a matter of when. But most importantly, that it needed to happen in advance of the transfer portal opening, just so those communications that take place with potential prospects can know, okay, number one, it's going to be different than last year. There's going to be a new offensive coordinator. And then you can kind of go through the process of trying to firm up who the next offensive coordinator is going to be. We know that there's been a lot of conversations with various options thus far. We are not in position at this point in time to name any names. But things are rolling, and I think that's important for the future of the program, especially after how poor the offense was this past season.
Yeah, when you look at the offensive numbers, and Greg, you certainly have them, and we've talked about them plenty, there has to be a change. And so, like you said, the timing was the only issue. Freddie Kitchens, of course, a holdover for Mac Brown's staff, and my reporting is he showed up for work every day and ended up getting the offensive coordinator position. I'll tell you, he was a fun dude to talk to, but it just didn't work, Greg, as offensive coordinator, given the numbers. I mean, the numbers were as bad as we've seen at North Carolina really ever.
They really were. And if you look at, I'm a big metrics guy, so I looked at the FEI, which is basically that's a metric that measures per possession scoring advantage adjusted for opponent. It's a good way to say, okay, even if this team played a weak schedule, how did the offense measure up? Well, we know that Carolina played a weak schedule this past year, but Carolina was 109 in FEI offense. And that is the lowest at UNC. It's the first time UNC has been outside of the top 100 in that offensive metric in the metrics era, which dates back to 2007. So that kind of gives you an indication. When you look at some of the other numbers, we talked a lot about the lack of explosive plays for this offense this year. You look at yards from scrimmage of plays of 10-plus yards. North Carolina had 134. They were 120th nationally, last in the ACC. 20-plus yard plays, Carolina had 26, last in the ACC, tied for 134th nationally. And if you look at 30-plus yard plays, Carolina had 11, which is just mind-boggling. Last in the ACC, of course, and tied for 133rd nationally. So this was an offense that struggled to run the ball. There was no explosive options, really. I mean, Jordan Shipp was about it in terms of the passing game. It didn't even seem like they tried that often to push the ball down the field. Part of that was because of the offensive line woes, but just a lot of parts of this that just did not work. And when that happens, you've got to make changes, and Freddie Kitchens is out.
Yeah, when you look at it, and we talked about this, and we talked about potential coaching changes, with Kitchens and others. But when you look at the blend, Greg, and this was the important part, I felt like, whether the quarterback, was it OC, was it offensive line? Well, it was all three for North Carolina. So I guess is this the second mark we talked about after the recruiting class that they needed to hit? I mean, maybe part A of the second mark here. Bill Belichick in year two making some adjustments that I guess maybe figured out, hey, they don't work after all. Let's move on. I mean, your take on what's next here. I think they've got to hit home runs.
Yeah, and I guess you can include this as part of that. Like you said, kind of a part A, although I didn't think this was really even a conversation point. I think this had to take place. So Yeah, give him credit for making the move, but really what matters is what comes next, to your point. Because what we saw in the field this past year just didn't cut it. And I think one of the critical things is, Bill Belichick is a defensive mind, and you can do things at the NFL level to really work around your defense because you have so many elite players. The way the college game is structured, you can have a really good defense, and there are teams like Ohio State and Indiana and Georgia and Texas A&M that have really good defenses, and they still give up a lot of points because with how college is, you can really attack defenses with a lot of different looks. There's a lot of different schemes in the college game, a lot of nuance that you can play with. And it's just tough to be, like the old 96, 97 Carolina teams where you could just shut teams down on the defensive end and your offense didn't have to do much. Those days are gone. And so I think that was a bit of the learning curve that we talked a lot about with Belichick this year. Is that approach? Hopefully, he saw that. Okay, this is not working. Like the defense can be really good, not that Carolina's was, but can be really good and still not be good enough. And so I think the next step is branching out from that and saying we've got to be able to take pressure off the defense. It doesn't matter how good we want the defense to be and how good it will eventually be. You got to take pressure off the defense and give it an advantage. And you do that by being explosive and really not requiring your offense to go 8, 9, 10 plays down the field just to score points. You need some quick hitters to loosen things up. All the good teams have that. All the good Carolina teams the last couple of years have had that. So that is the key thing. You've got to find somebody that is familiar with the college game, that has had success at the college level to be able to come in and execute the type of offense that you need.
Yeah, I don't think there's any doubt about that. That has to happen. The NFL way of coordinating an offense just doesn't translate, to your point. We're talking with Greg Barnes here on IC Daily Live this morning, Friday. I thought it was December 13th for a second, but it's only December 12th. We're getting there to mid-December, and coaching news, of course, starts coming out. Another guy, Greg, I thought special teams was pretty good. I mean, the only beef I had with special teams was maybe returning kicks when you need to take the free yardage. But beyond that, Mike Priefer out as well as special teams coordinator. Sounds like today is the day that Belichick's at least allowing or making these moves publicly. Your thoughts on that one?
Well, one, I would say a lot of fans have been frustrated that Belichick hasn't released information the way they would like. And so some of the criticism was that he didn't even announce the coaching staff until March, right before spring practice started last spring. So I think this is some indication that, hey, these moves needed to be made, and there needs to be some sharing with the public to say, all right, look, we're on the track here. And so I think fans should be able to appreciate that and understand kind of they're at least moving in the right direction with some of that PR stuff. But yeah, when we look at special teams, it's very easy just to focus on the specialist, the punter and the place kicker. And North Carolina had two very good options at those positions. But I do think part of the issue here, I don't understand the dynamics within the coaching staff and if they were a good fit or not. I'm sure that probably had something to do with it. That's probably most to do with it. But when you have a dearth of talent like Carolina had this year that we've talked about all year long, that factors into your special teams, because typically what you have is you're going to have some starters that play special teams, but for the most part, it's going to be your backups that fill out those positions. And if you don't have a lot of talent starting on offense and defense, then that tells you a lot about your special teams. And so I think some of the breakdowns that we saw on the special team side was just kind of a talent issue. Priefer got stuck into the middle of it, but with him going out, to your point, now you got two coaching moves. Now you have flexibility with how you want to structure your staff. I think that's important. So if you need to move somebody around, you've got an open position, and you can be as creative as you want to be with your staff setup as long as you stay within those 10 key positions. And so that's another aspect of this as well.
Yeah, and great point about fit. And you can't really know until you work with them. And Belichick has put together a staff, or had put together a staff, of guys from all over. And when you work together in the same building, you find out about fit and personalities and all that. And I always say, well, I can't say that it's analogous to something else in our lives that we've all experienced. Belichick's statement regarding Kitchens and Priefer. We want to thank Kitchens and Coach Priefer for their commitment and many contributions to our program and student athletes. We wish them both nothing but the best in their future endeavors. Pretty standard statement issued there from Belichick. Greg, any surprises that you've uncovered or heard from sources and all over the last few weeks, or is this kind of going like we expected? Maybe even more information out, to your point earlier, than we expected given the past year.
Yeah, as we touched on initially, we reported this was expected to happen last week. So it was really just a matter of, okay, when's the news going to come out? And we presumed that it would fall probably after signing day. I didn't think it would take until Friday of the next week, but here we are. So that aspect of things didn't surprise me. It would not have surprised me if we never heard an official statement about Freddie Kitchens being fired. I was almost kind of expecting the next word we heard to be, all right, here's the new offensive coordinator, and we thank Freddie for his time. So the fact that we actually have two components of this, I think is interesting, although it's not that relevant. But the key thing for people to understand here is the portal opens on January 2nd. So we're almost 5 weeks away, I guess a little bit more than 4 weeks away from that. What this does, number one, you can say to any prospective recruit, look, we're making changes on offense. We've already removed the offensive coordinator. What we did last year is not what's going to be taking place moving forward. These are the ideas and concepts that we're looking to implement. We're working on getting an offensive coordinator in place, but this is what we're wanting to do. And I think anybody that understands Bill Belichick, as well as most of these coaches, Belichick's going to have his hands in what the offense looks like for sure. There's going to be parameters. Now, within those parameters, the offensive coordinator is going to have some flexibility. But this is not going to be a situation where the offensive coordinator has full control. Belichick's going to run his program the way he wants to run his program. That's important to know. But once you kind of get into that offensive scheme, you can share those details with these quarterbacks and offensive linemen, all these guys that you potentially need, and just share them. And that way you don't necessarily have to have an OC in place immediately. Now, I do think you have to have one in place before January 2nd. Mm-hmm. So you can say, look, these are the things we're thinking about. We're going to have somebody in place before January 2nd. So before you sign with anybody, once you enter the portal, we'll have somebody that you can talk to. But just know this is what we're planning to do. So if you have any questions, let me know. And then once we have an OC in place, they can take over that conversation.
Yeah, and I think an important part of that for Belichick and maybe the learning curve is always, you can't just say you're going to have a good coach. There will be no worries, you're going to have a good coach when you get here and all. They have to have boots on the ground and somebody in the position. Folks in the chat asking who and all that. Greg mentioned earlier, names have been bandied around about inside the building. We're not ready to report those. Certainly, they will be reported as soon as they are available for public consumption. But I'll tell people this, InsideCarolina.com, Mac on the Tar Pit has a wonderful list covering the waterfront of potential OC candidates. You got to be a Tar Pit Premium Message Board holder, so go to Inside Carolina and go and sign up for that and all. Greg, we do these shows, and this is the interesting thing about this time of year. We do a show, and literally it could be dated the next day. We knew the offensive coordinator there was going to be a change. I didn't expect it to drop on a Friday. Your thoughts on this process going forward for fans that are itching for information, wanting information, after a year of being told just to follow the process, just believe in the process. How do you shift away from that for a fan base starving for information, but also for wins on the field, and blend those two together? That's a tough ask for this coaching staff. We talked about it last night, but it needs to be done. The question is how in this day and age.
Yeah, I mean, it's a great question, Tommy, and I don't know exactly how to approach it. I mean, I think the easy answer is you just have to be patient, but nobody wants to hear that, right? I mean, I understand that. I don't want to be patient. What I would say is the fact that they went ahead and announced this, I think it shows a little bit of a tip of the cap to the fan base, just to say, look, this is how things are moving forward. I think that's a benefit. As I mentioned earlier, we know there's already been conversations with other coaches, offensive coordinators. So the conversations are taking place. The process is taking place. And so I don't know that they are far enough along to start crunching numbers quite yet. But it's not like this happened and it's like, okay, well, now I guess we have to go find an offensive coordinator. That's not how it works. So there's a lot going on behind the scenes, trying to find the right fit, trying to find somebody that can do what Bill Belichick needs. But you're right. Last year, because there was so much hype and attention around Bill Belichick and around the staff coming in and what the program could be, that the fan base was willing to say, all right, we're going to let it be. It's going to be great. We're going to let it play out. And then we saw what happened this season. And so there is this skepticism of like, okay, well, what are they doing now? Is this going to work? So all those things are fair. All those emotions are fair. But Belichick's going to be Belichick. He's not going to change after 50 years of coaching how he manages his business. So it's just a matter of recognizing that he knows that there's some changes that needed to be made. We see that officially this morning, and then trusting that he's going to be able to make it work, because either he makes the right changes or he doesn't. And I think kind of the important part of it is I don't see this thing dragging out 5 years and wondering, okay, is a change going to be made? Because this is just not a good situation. I think if it's a bad situation that only gets worse or doesn't get better, it's going to be very short-lived. I don't know if that is comforting or not, but I don't think this is a long runway for mediocrity. I think this is something where they know that they need to get this thing turned around very quickly. And if that happens, then of course it's going to regain trust and those types of things with the fan base.
Well, you said a lot. It's not going to be a long runway for mediocrity. I think that's a great way to put it. Great way to wrap this one. Unless you've got anything else, I'm sure we'll be back at some point. Another live pop-up show. It's impressive, Greg. 234 people in this chat on short notice on a Friday morning before 9 o'clock. I mean, I feel like we do more before 9 a.m. than anybody else does before they even get out of bed all day. So that'll stay the mantra of Inside Carolina. There's no offseason, and we're always on duty, and Greg Barnes is always on it reporting. Shout out to Jeremiah Holloway for the story and the work that you guys have done. It's Carolina football, man. It's going to be a wild ride in the offseason. That's Greg Barnes. I'm Tommy Ashley, sponsored by Johnny T-Shirt. Go see them at johnnytshirt.com or in person. And also go to InsideCarolina.com. Get your premium subscription. You're going to need it. You don't need to text your friends and say what's going on. You just go to Inside Carolina and you'll find out everything or most everything you need to know as it happens. Greg, it's always a pleasure.
Thanks, Tommy.